Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Enkrypt AI podcast on responsible AI. I'm Raghu Chandra, strategic advisor to Enkrypt AI, where I work with enterprises, startups, and research groups on AI security, governance, and trust. I'm delighted today to be joined by Dr. Anjana Susarla, Professor of Information Systems and Responsible AI at Michigan State University. Dr. Susarla is a leading voice on responsible and ethical AI, with widely recognized research on fairness, transparency, and governance in AI systems. I'm really thrilled to have her perspective today as part of this conversation. Anjana, thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Anjana, you've spent your recent years researching responsible AI. What originally motivated your focus on trust, governance, and accountability in AI systems?
So, before I started doing responsible AI, I used to be a researcher on social media. So, I used to study, what makes things go viral on social media, content engagement, seeding strategies for contagion, things like that. So, at some point, I had this conversation with a professor who studies healthcare AI, the use of AI in healthcare. And both of us thought it would be great to explore there's just so much material on social media platforms relating to healthcare. I think even Google, 1 out of 7 searches are about healthcare related information and so forth. So we are kind of depending on social media platforms to tell us about how to manage our daily life. One aspect is healthcare. So we recruited doctors, we worked with patient education experts, created this kind of corpus of annotated healthcare video data from YouTube. And we started looking what is the quality of medical advice that one can get on YouTube. Can we study if this conforms to patient education guidelines? Does this have validated medical information and so forth? And our initial first study itself was very sobering because it told us that a lot of the most popular videos on one healthcare condition, chronic condition, diabetes, most of them have very limited medical advice. So that is what got me into thinking about responsible AI.
Okay.
Platforms like YouTube or any other platforms, what is being prioritized is engagement. Video becomes popular if it's engaging for us. But what about the credentialing or trustworthiness or credibility or the accuracy of the information? What are all the different ways by which people are interacting with this information that they find through AI, through social media platforms? So I think that is what got me into responsible AI.
Wow, that's really, really amazing. And today, we all use, ChatGPT and other co-pilots,
Yes.
large language models to check out healthcare information. I do that a lot. Everyone, I think, does that.
Yes.
So it's going to be super relevant, your research. So
Yes.
on that, so when you look at the current state of enterprise adoption, you mentioned healthcare. So I will go beyond healthcare, even financial services, from large language models to autonomous agents. What are the biggest risks you see that boards and executives often underestimate?
Yeah, I think there's multiple levels of understanding AI accountability. And I think recently I wrote a post called, algorithmic accountability is like the game of Clue. So if you ever played that Clue game where you have to find the murderer, bit like that. But essentially what is happening is this is not about just individual testing, reliability, or how the system is performing what it's intended to perform, but it's kind of a more adversarial, red teaming effort, if you will, where we need to understand all these edge cases. We need to understand that people are using these large language models or other kinds of AI enabled services in a way that the designer did not really anticipate. So, how do we get the right benchmarks? And how do we understand accountability? Is this going to be a developer level issue? Is this going to be like there's an independent review board in an organization that certifies? Or should this be at the corporate? The boards of directors need to also understand algorithmic liability. So I think there's so many facets to this, right? And we are just at the, I think, very beginning in this journey. And companies have to also evolve best practices and maybe responsible AI toolkits to deal with all these kinds of newer, we are in kind of uncharted territory as far as AI is concerned.
Yeah, well said, Anjana. At Enkrypt AI, that's exactly what we have set out to do. In fact, our mission is to build the trust layer for enterprise AI, like you said, right, covering risk, compliance, and governance. So, from your perspective, why is this trust layer very critical to scaling AI responsibly rather? Yeah.
I think that's the foundation really is about I guess, like, what are the unintended consequences of using any system, right? A lot of times I think companies are thinking about AI, if they think about AI in terms of, oh, this is kind of like some shiny new tool. Using AI will make me better than my competition or better than someone else. What can end up happening is that we are we're not really paying attention to what happens. We're not paying attention to what is the training data, what are the consequences of decisions we make when we ignore, the sort of the byproduct of part of it could be bias related issues. The other, I think, broader than bias is also the question of how explainable something is, how transparent it is, how it could be just frustrating for a end user who suddenly has to deal with a AI chatbot instead of maybe talking to a real person. Or it can be the case that we are dealing with AI and we don't realize that, we think that this is a real person. So, all these are important ways by which we can establish trust in AI, right? We
Right, right.
need to have these kind of, what's the societal, at the societal level, we need to think of this as a risk management framework, if you will. So I think that's kind of the point I'm trying to make.
Okay, yeah. Thank you, Anjana. So, in fact, actually, Enkrypt AI's founder, Sahil, incidentally had a LinkedIn post yesterday about the tendency for enterprises on the same point that you just mentioned, right? So, deploy first and fix later, right? So, there is a rush to the market in deploying agents and co-pilots, and then not necessarily looking at risk, and then fixing it later. And that is something that we definitely have to be careful about. You have done a lot of work on AI ethics from an academic standpoint, research standpoint. You advise enterprises. You have written about on research journals, and also, I mean, you are profusely contribute to LinkedIn and other forums as well. But what do you see actually the gap between the academic AI ethics frameworks like thought leaders like you develop and the practical deployment in business? How can enterprises bridge that gap without
Yeah,
slowing adoption? Yeah, yeah.
yeah, I think that's the challenge, right? How do you take these principles, but it will have to be connected with governance of AI processes, the methods that itself, if we are deploying, and the kind of scalability and maybe human oversight. I think academics like me love talking about human oversight. But if you're a corporation, you're wondering about how to cut seconds in your response time. So, adding a human oversight layer, will that really scale? That's the worry that people have, right? So, essentially, I think this is why my vision is that responsible AI should not be seen as some sort of a broader goal, but it's really like a journey that companies have to take it and incorporate it in, think about it as sort of you scale up the hierarchy of responsible AI adoption, right? And what is the level of maturity you have with responsible AI deployment? Are you, at the very minimum, do you have some kind of bias assessments and audits? Are we learning from those audits and getting to the next level, which is kind of more reflective, right? I think those are kind of the issues to consider. So our standard frameworks are more on performance, cost, quality type of considerations. How do we broaden that to consider transparency or equity as value? I think those are, trustworthiness. We use this term a lot, but what does it actually imply in an organizational setting? Can we just do some A/B testing with different levels of transparency in our tools? I mean, those are all questions that we can ask.
Thank you. Where do you see the most urgent need for contextual guardrails? You mentioned healthcare. How about industries like financial services, public sector, and how can policy-based approaches help? At Enkrypt AI, we are trying to encourage enterprises to implement policy-based guardrails. So if you can throw light on this, yeah.
The policy-based guardrails, I think in the United States, it's the NIST, National Institute of Standards and Technology. They have a risk management frameworks that are fairly exhaustive. So at least we can start with those policies. And I also think that, corporations like Microsoft, IBM, they have taken so much thought leadership. So if you're a smaller organization and don't necessarily have a lot of resources, you can look at the best practices, that toolkits that are developed by, let's say, a Microsoft or IBM, and think about how those can apply. I mean, I'm just taking these two examples because these are, most familiar. But obviously, there's a lot of consulting organizations have also done fantastic work in championing. And obviously, when it comes to industry, the healthcare is the most critical. Leaders are definitely concerned about, especially now we are hearing about all these risks from chatbots and think these deploying them without any guardrails. Just a lot of red flags in healthcare. Financial services, obviously, there's already, I think there's some level of maturity. But I would say broadly in any kind of retail industries, whenever you have these customer facing processes, we have to be cognizant of what could be some risks that we are, that may arise with the use of AI.
Okay. So across industries, and obviously healthcare is of significance there. Okay.
Absolutely.
So what role do automated assurance, like red teaming and continuous monitoring, and more importantly, board level reporting play in giving enterprises the confidence to scale AI safely?
I think all these are very, very important. And, to the extent that boards can take some proactive role, or they should also, ask these questions, it goes a long way in assuring the stakeholders, all the external stakeholders as well as internal stakeholders in the organization, that AI is being deployed in a responsible manner. And I notice one thing as an academic, these issues are very considered very, very important. Whenever I go talk to people, not just in organizations, but my students, for example, they think responsible AI is very important. So there's a lot of awareness of these issues. In a sense, maybe we are in kind of this interesting moment where there are so many advanced capabilities of AI, but there is also concern from the public about are these capabilities being used, in the right manner. So to use that Spider-Man quote of with great power comes great responsibility. And companies should, I think that this is also an opportunity for organizations to say, look, here we are actually doing it right. And this is how to differentiate yourself from maybe your competitors or,
Okay. In fact, trust and safety is a differentiator. So,
yes.
So if you look 3 to 5 years out, so what shifts do you expect in how enterprises approach responsible AI? Do you anticipate more regulation or self-regulation or technical governance?
I think it would be maybe more self-regulation and technical governance.
Okay.
And the reason is that, if we see when it comes to regulations, the European Union has taken a more regulation kind of approach. But even in the EU, some of the newer regulations, there is kind of a pause. They've announced it's kind of a wait and watch, like those things are not immediately taking effect. So the challenge for in the US, I think different states have moved to adopt some kind of smaller level regulations. So companies have to be, of course, very pay attention to the landscape in different states. But I think at the federal level, I'm not really sure there is that appetite for kind of a very comprehensive legislation. So the thing then is, like I said, we're in an interesting kind of a situation where the by and large consumers and general public, we feel excited about AI, but we're also concerned about potentially harms from AI. So I think companies can definitely engage in responsible self-governance, more technical audits and having some kind of checks and balances within organization would be a good way to.
Okay. If you're advising a CIO or a CISO today, what's the
Yeah.
single most important step they should take right now to future-proof their AI investment?
I think that this responsible AI requires a cross-functional leadership within an organization. So you'd mentioned CISOs.
Mhm.
Are the CSOs, are they ready for a world of agentic AI, right? Can
Mhm.
we Are we prepared for a world with prompt injection attacks and all sorts of adversarial ways to kind of circumvent these barriers that are there within organizations? One example I've given is, think that someone was using ChatGPT, and
Mhm.
ChatGPT advised the person there was a captcha thing. So ChatGPT advised them to pretend to be disabled, visually disabled, to overcome this, captcha. So that's a very sobering kind of example, right? Like, what happens to your firewalls when these malicious things are possible? Important thing obviously is that cross-functional leadership, having maybe a responsible AI champion within an
Mhm.
organization, some
Mhm.
solid institutional review board, to that advise on AI trust and safety. Those would be important and
Mhm.
requires newer kind of individuals with that sort of cross-domain knowledge as well, right?
Right. Yeah, yeah, thank you. I mean, that's a really a deep insight. Today's conversation really be so valuable, not only for me and for our listeners as well. So, Dr. Anjana, thank you so much for joining us today and sharing your insights on responsible AI. This has been eye-opening conversation on how we can build AI systems that are not only powerful, but also safe, transparent, and accountable. And thanks to all of you for listening to the Encrypt AI podcast today. Stay tuned for more conversations with thought leaders from academia, industry, and research groups as we continue exploring the future of secure and responsible AI. If you'd like to learn more, follow Encrypt AI on LinkedIn and check out our model safety leaderboard at encryptai.com. Thank you, Anjana. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you.